Okay, so all this week we have been really diving into those natural resources, and we talked about what makes some resources renewable and what makes some non renewable, and what are some good and bad things about using both. So, today, what we're going to really wrap up with natural resources with is okay, so if we do use a lot of those fossil fuels, a lot of those harmful resources, what can we do to reduce any negative impacts or negative effects that those resources may have on our earth? So, like this first line says, there are certain things that us humans that we do that can leave a negative effect on our environment. And of course, remember when we use those non-renewable energy sources, they are not as great for the environment because we talked about how they release those greenhouse gases, that carbon dioxide, which can increase that greenhouse effect, making the earth much, much hotter. And of course, the more people on the earth there are, the more resources we're using. So we're just increasing this process over and over again. So as Earth's population keeps growing and growing, we're using more and more of those renewable or non-renewable resources. And we know that once we use them, they're going to be gone forever. So we got to kind of figure something out here, right? And again, I'm going to go through these slides pretty quickly because this is one that we've actually already done. So if you need to pause or slow down or ask me to go over something in more detail, please hit me up. That's what I'm here for. So I just talked about the greenhouse effect, and we talked about this on Tuesday. So this is what's actually causing that global warming or that climate change when we increase those greenhouse gases like that carbon dioxide, which happens when we burn up those fossil fuels. So anytime we increase that greenhouse effect, you're actually going to see Earth's average temperature increase, which changes the climate in a lot of environments. That's why we call it climate change. So think about the polar bears. They're up in the North Pole living on ice, and if it's getting warmer, it's melting. So they're kind of losing their homes. Look at this. This poor guy's a little bit stranded. There's been a major increase in forest fires, which we have talked about. So the more we are using our non-renewable resources, the more we are releasing that carbon dioxide, which is in turn increasing that climate change. So we're going to talk about what we can do, and when I say we, I mean the earth as a whole or our country, and then what you specifically can do to decrease these negative effects. So things we can do to decrease the negative effects of climate change is we can actually pass laws that regulate the amount of carbon dioxide certain companies release into the air. So there are laws that can say, hey factory, you can only burn this much fossil fuels because if you burn any more than that, that's releasing way too many greenhouse gases. So you can pass laws to actually cut off how much they are releasing into the air. And then of course you can always use more renewable energy sources because they do not release that pollution or those harmful chemicals. You personally, you can walk or carpool, which means you can ride in cars with groups instead of everyone just driving yourself. I know y'all can't drive yet, but you will be very soon. This is good because when you drive your car, you are burning up that gas that you put into your car, right? So the more cars being used, the more gas that is being released from your car and into the atmosphere. So if you have a short distance to go, it's better to just walk or ride with your friends instead of you all driving separate. Same thing with the thermostat in your house. If your house is heated up by gas especially, if you just turn down the thermostat, don't use it nearly as often, that can also save some non-renewable resources that are being used. And lastly, once you are old enough, you can vote for people who will pass these laws, who actually have the power to make these decisions. You can vote for people who care about this kind of stuff. So yeah, little stuff you can do yourself. The other negative thing that we have discussed that humans tend to do is we love to just chop down trees. So what we call the removal of large amounts of forest. So not just chopping down one tree, that's going to be okay. But when you have, like in this picture, a whole forest and you just wipe it out, that's what we call deforestation. And we typically do this to build up a city. Like if you need a place to build a bunch of homes, they'll just totally rip out a forest. or if they just want to use the wood for either making furniture or to construct other things, that's what they'll wipe out all of these forests for. But this isn't really a good thing because when you chop down all those trees actually love to hold on to carbon dioxide inside their roots and inside their tree trunks. So whenever you chop down a tree, it actually releases that greenhouse gas, that carbon dioxide into the air. So when you chop down a bunch of them, that is a whole lot of carbon dioxide that you are just releasing into the atmosphere. Not great. So one thing we can do is the opposite of deforestation, which is reforestation. So that is just building a whole bunch of trees after a bunch of them have been cut down. So basically you're replacing any of the forests that were destroyed. Now things that you can do are, again, vote for people who will put regulations on deforestation. So vote for people who will say, nope, we cannot cut down trees in this certain area. We need to keep them the way that they are. And of course, we've heard this 1,000 times, reduce, reuse, recycle, meaning you can reduce the amount of things that require trees. So paper is made from trees. So if you reduce the number of paper or amount of paper you use, you're saving some trees. When we say reuse, that just means you're literally reusing something instead of throwing it out. So think about, like, if you have like a tub of Cool Whip, right, and you eat it all because Cool Whip is delicious, you can use that tub that it comes in as like a plastic container for like leftovers or something to put inside your fridge. So that's an example of reusing something instead of just using it once and throwing it away. And recycling is similar, but instead of throwing that plastic bin in the garbage, you put it in the recycling. So it can be broken down and made into something else instead of just sitting in a landfill, which is actually what we're going to talk about next. Let's just go over here to the right. So landfills are areas where we keep our trash. So this is like the dump. After your garbage is taken out by the garbage guy, this is where he takes it. So basically you're filling the land with trash. So it's not good because A, it just doesn't look good. Look at that, that's gross. And it's probably very stinky. But also when all of that trash is piled up like that, it actually automatically starts kind of breaking down and releasing toxins, so pollutants or things that are going to be harmful chemicals into the air. So that is not good. Another thing that's not so good for the area is mining. And we know we have to do or have to use mining to usually get out coal or your oil. So this is what we are using to remove all those non-renewable energy sources from the ground. So it's not good because A, it disrupts habitats. I mean, look at all this land that is dug up. Not much is going to live there after that, right? And it totally changes the landscape, or it says pollutes waterways. So if we have a lot of water, that creates enough runoff. We know what runoff is. That's extra water flowing over the surface of the earth. That runoff can actually pick up any bad chemicals and bad rocks or pieces of coal that are in this mine and carry it into major waterways. So like imagine if we had a big stream flowing all the way over to the Mississippi River, but it was carrying bad chemicals. You would dirty up or contaminate that river. So that's not a good thing. We like things to be nice and clean, right? So mining and landfills, not so great. But last but not least, what can we do about this? So for mining specifically, we say reclamation. I had to look to make sure I was spelling it right. You guys know I can't spell. So reclamation, that is when you are restoring or renewing land that was once dug up by mining. So it isn't 100% because when you're still digging into the ground, you're still really messing up the natural formations of rock. So you can make it look real nice, but actually back where I'm from in Ohio and very close to West Virginia, there's a lot of old mines. And sometimes when you go through that reclamation, when you fill in any land that was mined up, it's still not very sturdy. So sometimes this land can actually cave in. And I don't know about y'all, but I would not want my house to just suddenly cave in one day. So reclamation looks nice, but it's not 100%. So really, we just want to avoid mining altogether. And another thing we can do is national parks. So those are parks or pieces of land in the nation that is it is illegal to mine or cut down trees or any of that. So creating more national parks prevents all of this from happening in the first place. And then for landfills, again, don't throw out as much stuff, reuse it, recycle it, or just don't use as much of it so you don't have as much to be thrown away. So, like, think of all the water bottles you use in the world. Instead of just consistently buying new water bottles, just get like a reusable one, or same for like coffee, get like a reusable cup so you are not constantly throwing out plastic bottles on plastic bottles that are just going to sit in a landfill. Kind of gross. So those are all of the many steps that we can take to reduce any bad things that are affecting the earth and especially causing climate change, which again is just the increase in the earth's surface temperature. And again, I know I really went through that fast and that's a lot of information, but we've seen this before and I want to make sure we can really get to practicing it. So your cheat sheet, this is just a reminder of some key words that you really need to know. So what are we even talking about when I say greenhouse gases and fossil fuels? Certain words that maybe we didn't cover exactly, but you might see pop up in a question that you probably want to know the definition of. So when you see something is efficient, that just means this is the best way to use something. So you want to use something efficiently. Or like the word extract means to pull out of something. So they often use the word extracting when talking about oil because you're pulling oil out of the ground. So just in case you see that. And then what we're about to do is look at a couple of questions where we're trying to decide what type of resource would be best to use in a certain scenario. So these are two different types of words to look out for. So when you're choosing a good resource, these are the words that are going to hint you off and help you know, like, okay, this is the type of action that we should take to help reduce climate change. Or these are words that, like, I want to avoid these. So if they say, you know, oh, one way we can help protect the environment is to mine or go through mining. You already know that's a bad word. We avoid that. We're not going to pick it. So keep this cheat sheet up as you complete today's Ed puzzle.